The Grand Assembly Hall stretched for miles in every direction. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness so far above that clouds sometimes formed there. Floating platforms carried representatives from 4,000 different species, each one a member of the galactic conclave that had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Ambassador of the Directorate stood at the central podium. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms that moved in slow, careful gestures. His species had helped create the conclave. They believed in order. They believed in efficiency. They believed that every problem had a solution if you looked at it logically. Today, they had found a solution for the human problem. The Assessment Corps has completed its evaluation of the species known as humanity, announced. His voice carried through the vast chamber, translated instantly into thousands of languages. Earth there is classified as a Category 12, unstable tectonics, extreme temperature variations, dangerous solar radiation, predatory megafauna, toxic plant life, atmospheric composition at the very edge of acceptable parameters. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. We're rare. Most intelligent species evolved on stable, gentle planets where life was easy and cooperation was rewarded. The idea that sapient beings could emerge from such hostile conditions disturbed many of the representatives. Despite these challenges, humanity has achieved basic and nuclear technology, continued. However, our analysis shows that they offer nothing unique to the conclave. Their biological functions can be replicated by 17 existing member species. Their cognitive patterns fall within standard parameters. Their cultural outputs, while occasionally interesting, do not justify the resources required to integrate them. He paused, letting his words sink in. Therefore, the Assessment Corps recommends Classification 7, Managed Obsolescence. The assembly fell silent. Classification 7 was rare but not unheard of. It meant that a species had been judged unnecessary. It meant relocation to reservation worlds, population reduction through controlled breeding limits, and eventual natural extinction. The conclave did not believe in violence or cruelty. They simply believed in efficiency. And sometimes, efficiency meant letting a species fade away quietly rather than wasting resources on integration. At the edge of the assembly floor, standing on a small platform barely large enough for 3 people, Ambassador listened to the verdict. She was 52 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and lines around her eyes from years of difficult negotiations. She had spent her entire career preparing humanity for first contact. She had imagined many scenarios: war, trade, cultural exchange, technological uplift. She had never imagined this. Beside her stood Captain, her security escort, and Doctor, her science advisor. Both of them wore the same expression of shock and disbelief. They had come to the stars expecting to find wonders. Instead, they had found a death sentence. The human delegation may respond, said, gesturing toward their platform. Stepped forward. Her platform floated toward the center of the chamber, carrying her past thousands of alien faces. Some looked at her with pity, others with curiosity, a few with something that might have been discussed. None of them looked at her like an equal. She reached the central speaking position and looked up at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. I have a question, she said. Her voice was calm, steady. She had learned long ago that showing fear only invited attack. You say that humanity offers nothing unique. You say that we can be replaced. But your Assessment Corps spent only 6 months studying our planet. 6 months to evaluate 8 billion people and 10,000 years of civilization. How can you be certain you haven't missed something? Made a gesture that his species used to indicate polite dismissal. The Assessment Corps has evaluated over 200,000 species since the conclave's founding. Our methods are refined and reliable. We do not make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, said. Perhaps Anna replied, but the conclave has evolved beyond such inefficiencies. Felt anger rising in her chest, but she pushed it down. Anger would not help her people. She needed to think to find an angle to buy time. We request a period of reconsideration, she said. 30 solar cycles to prepare a formal response to your verdict. The assembly murmured again. This was an unusual request. Most species accepted their classification without argument. The conclave's judgment was considered final. Consulted with several other representatives through a private communication channel. After a long moment, he turned back to, Your request is granted, he said. You have 30 of your planet's days to accept the terms of managed obsolescence. If you refuse, the Conclave will be forced to implement the classification through direct intervention. This is not a threat. It is simply procedure. We hope you will use this time to help your people understand and accept their situation. Nodded once sharply. We understand perfectly. She turned and walked back to her platform. As it carried her toward the exit, she kept her back straight and her head high. She could feel thousands of eyes watching her, waiting to see her break down or beg for mercy. She did neither. Captain leaned close as they left the assembly hall. Ambassador, what are we going to do? We can't fight them. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours, maybe thousands of years. We're not going to fight them, said quietly. Then what? Didn't answer immediately. They passed through massive doors into a corridor lined with artwork from 100 different worlds. Beautiful, peaceful scenes of civilizations that had learned to live in harmony with their environments. Civilizations that had never known real struggle, real hardship, real desperation. She thought about human history, about the ice ages and the plagues, about the wars and the famines, about every disaster that should have wiped humanity from existence and somehow hadn't. She thought about the sheer, stubborn refusal to die that ran through her species like blood through veins. The Conclave saw humanity as obsolete. They saw a primitive species from a hostile world, offering nothing of value. They saw a problem to be solved through careful management and quiet extinction. They had no idea what they were looking at. We're going home, finally said. And then we're going to show them exactly what a species can do when someone tries to tell us we don't deserve to exist. Doctor looked at her with wide eyes. How? Smiled, and there was something fierce in it. Something that the comfortable species of the Conclave had forgotten how to recognize. I don't know yet, she admitted. But we have 30 days to figure it out. And if there's one thing humans are good at, it's finding a way to survive when everyone else says it's impossible. Their ship departed from the Conclave's capital station 1 hour later. Behind them, the assembly continued its business, already moving on to other matters. The human question had been resolved. In 30 days, the primitives would accept their fate, and the galaxy would continue its orderly progress. None of them noticed the fire burning in its eyes, as her ship jumped to faster-than-light speed. None of them understood what that fire meant. They would learn. For 29 days, Earth went silent. The Conclave's observation drones circled the blue planet in high orbit, watching and recording everything below. They saw factories working around the clock, smoke rising from industrial centers on every continent. They saw military bases activating, soldiers moving, aircraft flying in patterns that didn't match any known training exercises. They saw ships launching from every spaceport on the planet, carrying materials and personnel to unknown destinations. Most importantly, they saw every nation on Earth talking to each other. Countries that had been enemies for centuries were suddenly sharing resources and information. Old wars were forgotten. Old grudges were set aside. For the first time in human history, the entire species was working together toward a single goal. The assessment corps didn't understand what they were seeing. Their reports called it panic behavior and desperate activity without strategic purpose. They had studied thousands of species facing Classification 7. Most of them went through stages of denial, anger, and eventually acceptance. The humans seemed stuck in the denial phase, wasting their final days on meaningless projects. But deep beneath the Himalayan mountains, in bunkers that had survived nuclear threats and world wars, something very different was happening. Doctor hadn't slept in 4 days. She sat in a small room surrounded by screens displaying biological data, evolutionary charts, and comparative analyses of every species in the Conclave's database. Ambassador had given her a simple mission: find out why humanity was different, find out what the assessment corps had missed. She had started by studying the Conclave species. Thousands of them, each one unique in their own way, different body structures, different senses, different ways of thinking. But as she dug deeper, she started to notice patterns. Every single species in the Conclave had evolved on what they called garden worlds, planets with stable climates, gentle seasons, and predictable environments. Their evolution had rewarded cooperation and patience. They had developed intelligence slowly, over millions of years, in harmony with their surroundings. Earth was nothing like that. Pulled up the geological history of her. Mass extinction events, ice ages, volcanic winters, asteroid impacts. In the last 500 million years, Earth had experienced 5 major extinction events that had wiped out most life on the planet, and humans themselves had nearly died out multiple times. The catastrophe, 74,000 years ago, had reduced the human population to perhaps 10,000 individuals. They should have gone extinct then. But they didn't. She moved to human evolution. Persistence hunting across African savannas, chasing prey for hours under a burning sun until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. No other species in the galaxy had developed this ability. It required a unique combination of endurance, temperature regulation, and sheer mental determination. Then there was the human brain. Other species had larger brains, faster processing, better memory, but humans had something else. A strange flexibility, an ability to adapt to any situation, to learn any skill, to survive any disaster. The assessment corps had called this unremarkable, was starting to realize it was anything but. On day 22, she finally understood. She burst into the main command center, where Ambassador was coordinating the global response. Generals and presidents from every major nation were present, either in person or through secure holographic links. "I know why they're afraid of us," announced. The room fell silent, turned to face her. "Explain." Pulled up a holographic display showing 2 evolutionary trees. One represented the conclave species, smooth, gradual development over millions of years. The other represented humanity, jagged spikes and sudden changes, extinction events followed by rapid adaptation. "Every species in the conclave evolved to cooperate with their environment," she said. "They learned to work with nature, to find their place in the ecosystem, to optimize their existence for maximum efficiency with minimum conflict. That's why they built their civilization the way they did. Order, stability, everything in its proper place." She zoomed in on the human evolutionary tree. "We didn't evolve to cooperate with our environment. We evolved to fight it. Every generation, Earth tried to kill us, and every generation we found a way to survive anyway. We're not optimized for efficiency, we're optimized for survival against impossible odds." General, representing the Chinese military, leaned forward. "What does this mean in practical terms?" "It means they've never encountered a species like us," said. "Their wars are carefully calculated affairs with defined rules and acceptable losses. They fight for resources or territory, and they stop when continuing would be inefficient. But humans don't fight like that. We fight even when winning is impossible. We keep going even when logic says we should surrender. We'd rather die than give up." She paused, looking around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. "The conclave classified us as obsolete because their models couldn't predict us. We don't fit their categories. We don't behave the way species are supposed to behave. And I think deep down that terrifies them. They just don't want to admit it." Ambassador stood slowly. For the first time in weeks, something like hope flickered in her eyes. "Can we use this?" "I believe so," said. "Their entire civilization is built on predictability and optimization. They've forgotten what it means to face an enemy who won't play by the rules. An enemy who will do whatever it takes to survive, no matter the cost." The room buzzed with conversation. Military leaders began discussing strategies. Scientists started proposing ways to weaponize humanity's unique traits. Politicians debated how to present this information to the conclave. Raised her hand for silence. "We're not going to threaten them," she said. "Not yet. First, we're going to show them. We're going to fly our ships right into their territory, not sneaking around the edges, but straight through the front door. We're going to let them try to stop us. And when they fail, they'll understand what they're really dealing with." "And if they don't fail?" someone asked. Smiled. It was the smile of someone who had spent 30 days preparing for exactly this question. "Then we'll make them fail. That's what humans do. We fail and fail and fail, and then we succeed anyway, because we don't know how to quit." On day 29, as the conclave waited for humanity's submission, Ambassador transmitted a single message to the Grand Assembly. "We decline your generous offer. We will be arriving shortly to discuss alternatives." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, conclave representatives looked at each other in confusion. No species had ever refused Classification 7. It was illogical. It was irrational. It was completely against the proper order of things. In the shipyards of Earth, in orbit around the Moon, in the asteroid belt where humanity had been quietly building for decades, engines began to ignite. Ships that had never been meant for war were fitted with armor and weapons. Crews that had never expected to fight were given quick training and even quicker prayers. The Armada was ready to fly, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when you tried to make humans obsolete. Admiral James stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched Earth grow smaller in the... He was 67 years old, with gray hair cropped short and scars on his hands from decades of military service. He walked with a limp from shrapnel that doctors had never fully removed from his hip. By conclave standards, he was broken, obsolete, ready for retirement. By human standards, he was exactly what they needed. The Armada stretched out behind his flagship in a formation that would have made conclave tacticians laugh. 47 ships, most of them converted mining vessels and cargo haulers. They had no elegant curves or gleaming hulls. They were ugly, brutal machines covered in thick armor plating and bristling with weapons that had been designed in less than a month. The Conclave's fastest warships could cross the galaxy in days. The human fleet would take 3 weeks to reach the capital. That was fine. They wanted to be seen. They wanted every species in the Conclave to watch them coming and wonder what these crazy were planning. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his first officer reported. Commander Sarah was young, barely 40, but she had commanded rescue missions in some of the most dangerous environments in the solar system. She knew how to keep people alive when everything went wrong. "Good," said. "Take us through the main shipping lanes, maximum visibility." "Sir, that will put us in range of at least 3 Conclave patrol zones." "I know," the Admiral smiled grimly. "I'm counting on it." The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed and entered Conclave territory. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. The human ships passed through system after system, and the local authorities simply watched. No one tried to stop them. No one even challenged them. The Conclave had declared humanity obsolete, and obsolete species didn't deserve the attention of proper military forces. That changed at the Straits. The Straits were a narrow corridor of safe space between 2 unstable nebulae. Every ship traveling to the Conclave capital had to pass through here. And waiting for them was the Third Fleet, 200 warships arranged in perfect geometric formation. Admiral, cousin to the diplomat who had pronounced humanity's death sentence, commanded from his flagship. He transmitted a message as the human fleet approached. "Unregistered vessels, you are in violation of Conclave travel protocols. You will power down your engines and prepare to be escorted to a holding facility. Resistance is not recommended." Read the message and laughed. Actually laughed loud enough for his entire bridge crew to hear. "Send him our response," he ordered. The communications officer looked nervous. "What response, sir?" "Tell him to get out of our way, or don't. I really don't care which." The message was transmitted. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the fleet began to move, spreading out into an attack formation. Their ships were beautiful, had to admit, sleek and fast, with weapons designed for precision strikes at optimal range. They had no idea what they were facing. "All ships execute Formation Delta," commanded. The human fleet didn't spread out to match the... Instead, they clustered together, forming a dense wedge with the heaviest ships at the front. It looked like suicide. The Conclave's tactical computers predicted the battle would last approximately 15 minutes, ending with the complete destruction of the human fleet. Those computers had never seen humans fight. The ships opened fire at maximum range, their precision weapons designed to disable enemy vessels with minimal damage. Perfect, clean, efficient warfare. The shots struck the lead human ships and did almost nothing. The thick armor plates absorbed the energy, glowing red but holding firm. "They're using mining equipment for armor," Commander reported, amazement in her voice. "The Conclave weapons aren't designed to penetrate industrial shielding." "Forward ships increase speed," ordered. "Close the distance." The human fleet accelerated, driving straight into the heart of the formation. This wasn't what the Conclave expected. Proper space warfare was conducted at range, with careful calculations and tactical retreats. You didn't charge directly at a superior enemy. It was wasteful. It was dangerous. It was insane. It was exactly what humans did. The first ship to fall was caught completely by surprise when a human mining vessel rammed directly into its side. The impact killed both ships, but it also threw the perfect formation into chaos. Suddenly, the humans were among them, fighting at ranges so close that precision weapons were useless. Human guns weren't precise. They were built on a philosophy the Conclave had never encountered. If one shot might miss, fire 100 shots. If a weapon might not penetrate, make it bigger until it does. The human ships vomited fire in all directions, filling space with metal and explosives. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the straits were filled with wreckage. The Third Fleet had lost 140 ships. 60 more were too damaged to fight. Admiral's flagship had been boarded by human marines and captured after a brutal hand-to-hand battle in the corridors. The humans had lost 12 ships. They salvaged 6 of them for parts. Admiral sat in his command chair, exhausted but alive as his crew cheered around him. His hip ached from standing too long. His hands were shaking from adrenaline. By any logical measure, they should have lost. The Conclave had better technology, better training, better everything. But the Conclave had forgotten something important. They had forgotten what it meant to fight an enemy who didn't care about acceptable losses. An enemy who would trade ship for ship, life for life, and keep coming no matter what. "Send a message to the Grand Assembly," said quietly. "Tell them we're still coming, and tell them the next fleet they send had better be bigger." The message was transmitted. Across the galaxy, species that had never heard of Earth suddenly knew the name. They watched the battle recordings in disbelief. They saw the crude human ships absorbing punishment that should have destroyed them. They saw human crews fighting with a ferocity that all rational analysis. They saw a species doing exactly what species did, surviving against impossible odds. The Armada resumed its journey toward the Conclave capital. Behind them, the wreckage of the fleet drifted silently in the void. The galaxy had received its first lesson in human determination. It would not be the last. The human fleet arrived at Axiom Prime to find the entire galaxy waiting for them. Ambassador stood at the viewport of the Defiance and stared at the sight before her. Thousands of ships from hundreds of species filled the space around the Conclave's capital world. Not warships, observation vessels, diplomatic cruisers, personal yachts of wealthy beings who had traveled across the galaxy to see with their own eyes. "They're not here to fight us," Admiral said, standing beside her. "They're here to watch." "Good," replied. "Let them watch, let them all watch." The Grand Assembly Hall was even more crowded than before. Species that hadn't left there in centuries had sent representatives. Civilizations that communicated only through computer messages were present in person. The viewing galleries were packed with beings of every shape and size, all of them staring at the small human delegation as they entered. Ambassador stood at the central podium, looking considerably less confident than he had 30 days ago. His species had lost a fleet to these primitives. His own cousin had been captured. The carefully ordered galaxy he had devoted his life to maintaining suddenly seemed much less stable. "The human delegation is recognized," he said, his voice stiff. "You have returned as you said you would. You have demonstrated your military capabilities. The Conclave acknowledges this. However, the original classification remains in effect. You have proven that you can fight. You have not proven that you belong among civilized species." Walk to the speaking platform. Behind her, Admiral and Doctor followed. The Admiral still limped. He still carried shrapnel in his body. He could have had it removed by Conclave medicine in an hour, but he had refused. Understood why. Some scars were worth keeping. "I'm not here to prove we belong," said, her voice carrying through the vast chamber. "I'm here to explain why you're afraid of us, and I'm here to tell you that you should be." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. This was not how defeated species spoke. This was not how anyone spoke to the Conclave. 30 days ago you told us we were obsolete," continued. "You said we offered nothing unique. You said we could be replaced. I want to show you how wrong you were." She gestured and Doctor activated a holographic display. Images of Earth appeared, volcanoes erupting, hurricanes spinning, earthquakes tearing the ground apart. "Our planet has tried to kill us every day of our existence. We evolved in an environment that most species would consider a death trap. When we were still living in caves, we faced predators that could tear us apart. We survived. When ice ages covered our world, we should have frozen to death. We survived. When a supervolcano nearly caused our extinction, reducing our entire population to a few thousand individuals, we survived." She paused, letting the images cycle through human history. Wars, plagues, famines, natural disasters, each one should have ended the human story. None of them did. "You built your civilization on cooperation and order," said. You learn to work with your environments to find peaceful solutions to optimize everything for maximum efficiency. That's admirable, truly, but it means you've forgotten something important. She looked around the assembly, meeting as many alien eyes as she could. You've forgotten what it means to struggle. You've forgotten what it means to fight for survival when there's no logical reason to keep fighting. You've forgotten what desperation looks like. The holographic display changed. Now it showed evolutionary data, the same information Doctor had discovered in the bunker. "We're not the only species in the galaxy," announced. "Your own surveys have identified thousands of planets classified as too hostile for intelligent life. But life finds a way. Intelligence finds a way. Right now, on dozens of those worlds, species are evolving just like we did, fighting their environments, learning to survive against impossible odds, developing the same stubborn refusal to die that brought us here today." Stepped forward. "This is speculation, you have no evidence." "We have your own data," Doctor interrupted. "Your assessment core classified these worlds as uninhabitable and stopped watching them, but we analyzed the long-range scans. At least 17 planets show signs of developing civilizations. Civilizations you've ignored because they didn't fit your models." The assembly erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions and accusations. Some demanded evidence. Others demanded that the humans be silenced. A few noticed looked thoughtful, perhaps even afraid. She raised her hand and waited for quiet. "You classified us as obsolete because we scared you," she said softly. "We don't behave the way species are supposed to behave. We don't surrender when we should. We don't accept death when it's offered. We fight and struggle and refuse to give up, even when every logical calculation says we've already lost." She stepped closer to the podium, her voice growing stronger. "You thought you could manage us. Reduce our population slowly, let us fade away quietly, file our genetics in a repository somewhere and forget we ever existed. But you can't manage a species. You can't optimize us or predict us or control us, because we didn't evolve to fit into your ordered galaxy. We evolved to survive in chaos." She turned to face directly. "So here's the truth you need to understand. We're not going away. Not in 30 days, not in 30 years, not ever. And those other species you've been ignoring, they're coming too. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. And when they arrive, they'll be just as stubborn and unpredictable and dangerous as we are." The ambassador drew herself up to her full height, which wasn't very impressive by galactic standards. But something in her eyes made even the largest beings in the assembly pay attention. "You have two choices. You can learn to live with us, not as managed populations waiting for extinction, but as equal members of your civilization. You can use our perspective, our determination, our experience surviving in chaos. Because someday, the ordered galaxy you've built is going to face a crisis your optimization models can't solve. And when that day comes, you're going to need species like us." She paused. "Or you can try to make us obsolete again. You can send more fleets. You can try to force us into submission. And you'll learn the hard way what happens when you try to kill something that refuses to die." The assembly was silent. 4,000 species, representatives of the most powerful civilization in galactic history, and none of them knew what to say. Smiled, it wasn't a friendly smile. "We'll wait for your decision, but don't take too long. We've got a lot of work to do, and we've never been very patient." The Treaty of Axiom Prime took 40 days to negotiate. 40 days of arguments, compromises, and difficult conversations between species that had never considered each other equals. By the end, both sides were exhausted, but they had reached an agreement that would change the galaxy forever. The humans would not be classified as obsolete. Neither would any other species, present or future. A new council would be formed specifically to locate and contact these civilizations, with human representatives playing a central role. The conclave would share technology and resources, but in exchange, the humans would share something the galaxy had forgotten, the knowledge of how to survive when everything went wrong. Ambassador signed the treaty on behalf of the conclave. His hands trembled slightly as he made his mark. His species had helped build this civilization over 12,000 years, always believing that order and optimization were the highest goods. Now they were being asked to accept chaos into their carefully structured society. But he had watched the battle recordings from the Straits. He had seen the human ships absorbing damage that should have destroyed them. He had seen crews fighting to the last breath, refusing to surrender even when survival was impossible. and he had finally understood what the assessment corps had missed. Humanity wasn't obsolete. They were something the Conclave had never encountered before, a species forged in fire, tempered by disaster, and completely unwilling to accept defeat. That kind of determination couldn't be optimized or replaced. It could only be respected. Admiral James retired from military service 1 week after the treaty was signed. The Conclave offered him their most advanced medical technology. They could remove the shrapnel from his hip. They could repair the damage from decades of service. They could make him young again, healthy again, perfect again. He declined. "These scars remind me of something important," he told the Conclave doctors. "They remind me that I earned my place here, that I fought for it, that everything worth having comes with a cost." The doctors didn't understand. How could pain be valuable? How could imperfection be meaningful? But they accepted his decision. They were learning that humans often made choices that seemed illogical but somehow worked out in the end. Accepted a position as humanity's first representative to the Conclave Security Council. His job was to help the ancient civilization prepare for threats they had never imagined, the kind of threats that couldn't be solved through careful calculation and optimal resource allocation, the kind of threats that required desperate measures, creative thinking, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. He was good at his job. The galaxy was grateful. Ambassador returned to Earth a hero, though she refused the title. Crowds gathered wherever she went. Politicians wanted to give her medals and honors. Children were named after her. She smiled and nodded and accepted the praise, but privately she just wanted to rest. She had spent her entire life preparing for first contact. She had imagined many outcomes, but never this. Never standing before the most powerful civilization in the galaxy and telling them that humanity refused to die. Never winning a war through sheer stubbornness rather than superior firepower. Never changing the course of galactic history with nothing but words and determination. On the day she stepped down from diplomatic service, she gave one final address to the people of Earth. "They called us obsolete," she said, standing before a crowd of millions in the square that now bore her name. "They looked at our planet, at our history, at our biology, and they decided we had nothing to offer. They said we could be replaced. They said we were unnecessary." She paused, looking out at the faces of her species. Young and old, rich and poor, every nation, every culture, every language united in a way they had never been before. They were wrong. Cheers erupted, but she raised her hand for silence. "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day of our existence. Earthquakes, volcanoes, ice ages, plagues, predators, disasters of every kind. And every time our world tried to destroy us, we found a way to survive. Not because we were stronger or smarter or better than the challenges we faced, but because we refused to give up." Her voice grew stronger, carrying across the square and through the broadcast systems that sent her words to every corner of Earth and beyond. That's what the Conclave didn't understand. That's what they couldn't predict or optimize or manage. The simple, stubborn human refusal to accept death even when it's standing right in front of us. The absolute conviction that no matter how bad things get, we can find a way through. The determination to keep fighting even when winning seems impossible. She smiled, and for the first time in months, there was warmth in it. "We're not going to forget what they tried to do. We're not going to pretend that everything is fine now. But we're also not going to let fear and anger define our future. We proved that we deserve to exist. Now we need to prove that we deserve to thrive." The crowd was silent, hanging on her every word. There are other species out there like us, other civilizations fighting to survive on hostile planets. The Conclave ignored them because they didn't fit the models, but we know what it's like to be written off. We know what it's like to be told you don't matter, and we're going to find them. We're going to help them. We're going to build something new, not a replacement for the Conclave, but an expansion of it. A civilization that has room for the fighters and the survivors, not just thee and the peacekeepers. She stepped back from the podium. "That's our mission now. That's our purpose. Not revenge, not conquest, but connection. Finding the other species that refuse to die and welcoming them into a galaxy that finally has room for all of us." The Armada was officially decommissioned 1 year later. Its vessels were converted to exploration and rescue ships, designed to reach hostile worlds and make contact with emerging civilizations. The crews who had fought the now trained as first contact specialists, learning how to approach species that had evolved in chaos and might not react well to strangers. But the shipyards remained active, the bunkers remained stocked, the training continued. Because humanity had learned something important in their brief conflict with galactic civilization. The galaxy was vast and ancient and full of wonders, but it was also full of species who had forgotten what it meant to struggle, who had forgotten what it meant to fight for existence against a universe that didn't care if you lived or died. Humanity hadn't forgotten. They never would. In the centuries that followed, as human explorers made contact with dozens of other species, and the galaxy slowly learned to accept that chaos could coexist with order, a saying spread among the stars. It was quoted in diplomatic halls and military academies, in scientific journals and children's stories. Never tell a human something is impossible. They'll just prove you wrong and ask what else you've got. And when young species asked why humans were so respected throughout the galaxy, and so feared, the answer was always the same. Because they come from a world that should have killed them. And when the most powerful civilization in history told them they didn't deserve to exist, they simply said no and made it stick. The universe was vast and cold and indifferent. But humanity had never cared about any of that. They just kept going, they always would.